The first scream didn't sound human. It was a tearing noise, high and sharp, swallowed by the groan of collapsing steel. Noah Hale ran toward it, ducking under swinging cables as the factory shook around him. His father's voice cut through the chaos, short, commanding, and scared. "Move! Everybody out!" Sparks burst from the ceiling. A metal beam snapped. The sound of men shouting blurred into one long roar. Noah's small hands clutched the edge of the stair rail as he searched for his father's hard hat through the haze. He found him on the upper platform, waving for the crew to run. The floor beneath him quivered. Noah yelled his name, but the noise swallowed it. The next moment came like lightning, the crack, the rush of air, then silence that felt too big for the world. When Noah opened his eyes, he was outside, pulled there by strangers. The factory behind him was a lung full of smoke. Someone said, "The whole side's gone." Someone else whispered, "Ward's still in there." That was his father's name. Noah tried to run back, but arms wrapped around him. He saw his father for the last time through a gap in the debris, still buried under twisted beams. The sirens arrived too late. That night, their house filled with people who spoke softly and left quickly. His mother sat by the window, staring at the empty street. Her hands shook around a mug she never drank from. Noah stood behind her, waiting for her to turn, but she never did. A week later, men from the construction company came with papers and hollow apologies. They blamed human error, said his father ignored orders. His mother's lip trembled as they offered a small settlement and a thick folder of debts. Noah didn't know what the words meant, only that his father's name was being dragged through mud he couldn't clean. When she signed the documents, he felt something tear inside him. Not the kind that bleeds, the kind that stays. The money didn't last a month. Bills came faster than meals. Noah tried selling tools from the shed, but collectors came first. They said the company wanted repayment for damage caused. He watched his mother beg. He watched them not care. On a gray morning, a black van arrived. Two men stepped out, smiling like preachers. "We can clear the debt," one said. "Temporary work program. The boy's strong." His mother's eyes filled. "He's 12, she whispered. "Then he's perfect," the man replied, pressing a form toward her. Noah didn't speak when she signed. She told him it was only for a few weeks. He believed her because she needed him to. He climbed into the van without a word, clutching his father's worn pocket watch, the only thing left that ticked in their house. The van smelled of diesel and secrets. When the door slammed shut, he saw his mother's face fade through the glass, framed by the fog and her own guilt. Hours later, they reached the outskirts of the city, a wasteland of twisted metal and burning trash. The scrapyard loomed ahead, endless piles of rust, towers of broken machines. The air was thick enough to taste. A man with a scar on his neck waited by the gate. "Name's Briggs," he said. "You work when the bell rings. You eat if you finish." He handed Noah gloves 2 sizes too big. Behind Briggs, other kids moved like ghosts, thin, silent, their faces gray from smoke. That night, Noah slept in a shipping container with 5 others. Rain tapped the metal walls like a clock counting down to something worse. The boy beside him coughed through the night until it turned into a whimper. Noah stared at the ceiling, whispering his father's name into the dark. There was no echo, only machines humming somewhere far away, chewing through the hours. Days blurred. He learned to strip copper from old wires, to smash engines open with a hammer, to keep his eyes down. The foreman laughed when anyone slowed. The belt in Briggs's hand made sure no one did. Noah's fingers split from cold and work, raw to the bone. He wrapped them with scraps of cloth. He stopped counting the days. The only time he saw the sun was through holes in the roof. Once an older boy named Leo tried to take his lunch, a crust of bread, a piece of meat that tasted like oil. Noah held it tight. "Give it," Leo hissed, grabbing his collar. Noah didn't let go. The bread fell into the mud. Leo shoved him down and laughed. Briggs watched from the distance, didn't say a word. That night, Noah didn't sleep. He sat awake, hands shaking, staring at the small pocket watch ticking faintly in his palm. Each click sounded like his father breathing. A month passed. Inspectors came, but it was all a show. They walked through the yard with notebooks and practiced smiles while the kids were lined up clean-faced and silent. Briggs called it presentation day. After they left, He threw the leftover food into the mud and made the boys crawl for it. Noah didn't move. The belt cracked near his feet. "You think you're better?" Briggs growled. Noah met his eyes for the first time. "No," he said quietly. "Just not broken." The belt hit his back until the words stopped coming out. That night rain poured again. The roof leaked. Noah pressed the pocket watch against his chest. For the first time since the collapse, he prayed. Not for rescue but for strength to survive one more day. The water on his face felt like tears he hadn't had time to shed. Somewhere outside, a machine roared and died. He thought of his father's voice. "Work honest, stay alive." But honest didn't live here. Weeks later, the furnace exploded. Fire tore through the yard, swallowing drums of oil and stacks of scrap. Noah ran into the smoke, dragging a coughing boy out by his shirt. Flames painted the night red. Briggs shouted orders no one followed. The air was heat and screaming. For a moment, Noah saw the same color he'd seen the night his father died. The same burning orange that takes everything but leaves the truth behind. When the fire died, 3 workers were gone. Briggs blamed the smallest one left alive. He lined everyone up and hit the boy until he stopped moving. Noah stood frozen, fists shaking. He wanted to scream, but his voice wouldn't come. When it was over, he touched the soot on his face and whispered to the ground, "They killed him, Dad. Just like they killed you." He opened his hand. The pocket watch ticked once, faint but steady. It sounded like a heartbeat. In that sound, he felt something awaken. A heat that wasn't from the fire. He didn't have a plan yet, just a promise. The next morning, as dawn cut through the smoke, Noah walked back to the yard. His back ached. His hands bled. But when the bell rang, he didn't move right away. He stood still, watching the men who thought he was theirs. The look in his eyes had changed, something sharper, something alive. That was the moment the boy died, and the fire began to build inside the man he would become. Noah didn't remember when he stopped believing his mother would come back. Every van that arrived brought new faces, never hers. He told himself she was saving money to buy him out, but that hope faded the way bruises did. Slowly, unevenly, and never all the way. What he didn't know was that the papers she signed weren't for work. They were a lifetime contract, forged by the same men who ran the scrapyard. Her name became just another signature buried in ink and debt. One morning, Briggs handed out new gloves and called it Promotion Day. Noah now worked closer to the furnaces, the hottest and most dangerous section of the yard. The air shimmered like glass. Every breath tasted of iron. The boys joked that you could smell your skin cooking. It wasn't a joke. Noah's hands blistered through the gloves within hours. Still, he worked. When a pipe burst near him and a wave of steam burned across his shoulder, he didn't scream. He just gritted his teeth and kept going. At night, he'd sit behind the generator and watch the machines chew through junk. The sparks reminded him of fireflies, if fireflies could burn your lungs. That's when Leo sat beside him, holding a bottle cap like treasure. "Heard Briggs say we're owned," Leo muttered. "That paper your mom signed, it wasn't work. It was a sale." Noah turned to him. "How do you know?" Leo shrugged. "He keeps the contracts in the office. I saw your name on one. Hale Noah." For a moment, Noah couldn't breathe. He felt every muscle tighten. His mother hadn't sent him here, she'd been tricked. He thought of her face the day she waved goodbye, her tears swallowed by guilt. Rage crawled up his throat, but he forced it down. "Where's the office?" he asked. Leo pointed toward the far corner. A steel shack guarded by a padlock and a dog that barked at shadows. "You won't make it," Leo warned. "They'll kill you." Noah stared at the glowing furnaces and said quietly, "Then I'll take something before they do." That night, he waited until the yard slept. The rain had stopped and fog curled over the junk piles like ghosts. He crept past the rows of scrap, every step measured with the silence of a thief who owned nothing left to lose. The dog stirred once but didn't bark, too tired, maybe too used to boys sneaking toward nothing. The shack door was locked, but the hinges were weak. He found a rusted crowbar, wedged it under the edge, and pushed until the metal screamed. Inside, a single bulb flickered. He found folders stacked in milk crates, names, dates, payments. Each page was a story like his. Children sold for debt labor. Parents gone, contracts renewed every year without consent. His name sat near the top. Next to it, stamped in red ink, property of Hale Industrial Supply, Division C. Beneath it, his father's name appeared under deceased employee liability. They had turned his father's death into the reason for his slavery. His hand shook so hard he could barely hold the page. He stuffed it under his shirt and turned to leave, but the bulb flickered again and a voice growled from the doorway. "What are you doing, boy?" It was Briggs holding a flashlight. Noah froze. Briggs stepped closer, the beam landing on the folder half open on the desk. His lips curled. "You think you're clever, huh? Snooping through things you don't understand." Noah didn't answer. The man's hand struck fast, backhanding him across the face. The taste of blood filled his mouth. Briggs grabbed him by the collar, dragging him outside. "You don't touch what's mine," he hissed. Noah kicked, catching the man's shin. Briggs cursed, swung the flashlight, and it hit Noah's temple. He fell hard. The folder slipped from under his shirt. Briggs snatched it, tore it in half and tossed the pieces into the furnace chute. The papers caught instantly, flaring orange. "Now you've lost twice," Briggs said, wiping his hands. "First your daddy, now the proof." He walked away laughing. Noah lay still, blinking through the blur, the side of his face swelling. When he could move again, he crawled to the chute. The papers were gone, burned to ash. Only a corner of one page survived, half a signature. His mother's. He pulled it out, the edges still smoking, and held it until the heat faded. Then he pressed it against his chest and whispered, "I saw it. I know." The next day, Briggs announced they'd be moving the younger boys to another site down south. Noah knew what that meant. Some never came back. He watched Leo's name appear on the transfer list. That night, Leo told him he'd tried to escape before the truck left. "You coming?" he asked. Noah shook his head. "Not yet. I'm not done." They clasped hands like brothers. At dawn, Leo ran for the fence while the guards changed shifts. The first gunshot echoed across the yard. Then another. The sound froze everyone. Briggs didn't even look up from his coffee. He just said, "Someone clean it up." That night, Noah sat alone, staring at Leo's empty cot. Something inside him broke cleanly, like a wire snapping under too much strain. He didn't cry. He didn't pray. He just whispered, "Okay." Then he started watching everything. Which guards smoked, which cameras didn't work, where Briggs kept the keys. He picked up scraps during work, batteries, wires, pieces of metal, and hid them under his bed. When the others asked why, he said, "Because metal remembers." Weeks passed. He built small things, silent things. A wire bent into a lock pick. A shard of mirror fitted inside a pocket watch lid. A battery-powered spark plug wrapped in cloth. Each night, he tested his inventions until his hands bled again. The scars on his palms were layered now, old ones fading under new ones. Every mark was a plan. Then one stormy evening, he heard a new voice outside the fence, a woman shouting over the rain. "I'm here for inspection," she said. Her accent was different, firm. Briggs cursed and told the guards to stall her. Through the fence, Noah saw the flash of a camera. The woman's lens caught everything, the smoke, the kids, the filth. For the first time in years, Noah saw fear on Briggs's face. That night, Briggs ordered all the boys locked inside. Noah lay awake, staring at the door. His hand brushed over the spark device he'd built, small enough to hide in his sleeve. He knew what it could do. The memory of the furnace fire still burned behind his eyes. He wasn't ready to use it yet, but he knew soon he would. The contract that bound him was ink on paper, but fire could erase ink. As thunder rolled overhead, Noah whispered to the dark, "You think you own me? You'll see what I build next." The spark in his palm flickered faintly, blue and alive. Outside, the storm swallowed the sound, but inside that container, something dangerous had finally begun to breathe. The bell ripped through the morning like a siren. Noah's eyes opened before the echo faded. He'd barely slept. Every joint ached, every breath scraped like sandpaper. Around him, boys scrambled from their cots, shoving into the same worn boots. Outside, the yard waited, smoke, heat, and noise swallowing the sky. The air was already thick with metal dust. Briggs stood by the gate, shouting names. His voice cut through the hum like a blade. "Move faster, you worthless scrap." Noah joined the line, his hands hidden in his sleeves. The device he'd built the night before pressed cold against his wrist, small enough to pass unnoticed. He didn't know what to call it yet, only what it could do. A short spark, a flash. Enough to start something if he ever needed chaos to cover his escape. The furnaces roared to life. Boys fed them with twisted engines and broken beams, sweat glistening under the orange light. The smell of burning oil made Noah gag, but he kept his face blank. Every day here felt like living inside someone else's nightmare. But now he had a purpose. Every scar, every bruise was a line in a plan he couldn't speak aloud. By midday, the heat became unbearable. One boy fainted near the conveyor. Briggs shouted for someone to drag him away. Noah moved first. The boy's skin was pale, his lips cracked. Noah poured water from a rusted can over his face until he gasped awake. Briggs snarled. "He's slowing production." Noah didn't look up. "He's dying," he said. The words came out steady, but his heart pounded. Briggs stepped close enough for Noah to smell the whiskey on his breath. "You forget your place again," he warned, jabbing a finger into his chest. "Next time I let him die. Maybe you with him." Noah said nothing. When Briggs walked off, the other kids looked at him differently. Like maybe there was something dangerous beneath his silence. That night, one of them, a small boy named Ethan, whispered, "Why don't you run away?" Noah stared at the ceiling. "Because they'd find me," he said quietly. "And if I run now, no one gets out." Later, when everyone slept, he crept behind the storage containers where Briggs's office light still burned. Through the window, he saw the foreman on the phone, pacing red-faced. "No, we can't move them yet," Briggs hissed. "That journalist was here again. I told you she's asking questions." The man on the other end said something Noah couldn't hear. Briggs's voice dropped lower. "We'll handle it. She won't get another chance." Then he slammed the receiver down and poured another drink. Noah slipped away, mind racing. That woman, the one with the camera, she was real. Not a dream. She had seen them. He needed to find her. The next morning, new guards arrived, bigger and quieter than the last ones. They carried guns now, not just sticks. The yard went silent whenever they passed. Briggs smiled more than usual, like a man who'd been promised protection. Noah noticed the difference in everything: the tighter routines, shorter breaks, the way workers flinched before speaking. They were preparing to hide something. At lunch, Ethan handed him a piece of wire. "You fix stuff, right?" he asked. "Can you fix this?" It was a broken flashlight. Noah nodded, twisting the wires back together with his knife. When the bulb flickered to life, Ethan's face lit with awe. "How'd you learn that?" Noah shrugged. "Machines talk. You just have to listen." The words felt strange leaving his mouth, like something his father would have said. That night, while others slept, Noah opened the flashlight again. He rewired the small bulb to his spark device, testing its charge. A tiny blue flare hissed, lighting the darkness for a second before fading. He smiled faintly. It worked. Days passed and rumors spread about transfers, accidents, and missing boys. The fear hung thicker than smoke. Noah knew it was almost time. He just didn't know for what. Then one afternoon, a truck arrived carrying new scrap. Crushed cars, twisted beams, and a stack of old office cabinets. Briggs told them to strip everything. Noah pried one drawer open and froze. Inside were torn folders stamped with the company's logo, the same one from the contract. His father's name appeared again, this time under a heading that read internal complaint. Safety violations ignored. Attached was a note. Meeting cancelled. File to be destroyed. Noah's pulse raced. This was proof, real proof, that his father had tried to stop the collapse. He folded the paper and hid it in his shoe. The metal edges cut into his skin, but he didn't care. His father had died telling the truth, and now that truth was alive again, burning in his pocket. He worked through the afternoon without feeling the heat. Every clang of metal sounded like a heartbeat, every breath a countdown. When night came, he went back to the generator and took out the paper. The edges were greasy, but the words were clear. He whispered, "You were right, Dad. They killed you." He didn't hear Briggs approach until the shadow fell across the light. "Talking to yourself now, boy?" Briggs said. Noah froze. The foreman crouched, eyes sharp. "What's that in your hand?" Noah hid it behind him. "Nothing." Briggs smiled thinly. "Then you won't mind showing me." He reached forward. Noah moved faster, flicking the spark device in his palm. The flare of blue light startled Briggs just long enough for Noah to run. The yard erupted in noise, shouts, boots pounding metal. Noah darted between stacks of scrap, the flare still burning faintly in his hand. He climbed over a fence, scraping his arm raw. A guard's flashlight swept past, too late. He slipped behind a truck and waited, chest heaving. The rain started again, washing soot from his face. In his shoe, the paper stayed dry, pressed against the warmth of his skin. When the noise finally died, he crawled out, trembling. He looked back at the furnaces glowing in the distance. Behind those flames was the truth that could destroy them all. He touched the scar on his shoulder where steam had burned him months ago. The pain was still there, but so was something stronger, a clarity he hadn't known before. He whispered into the rain. "You built this place on lies. I'll burn it with truth." Lightning flashed above the yard, splitting the night open for a heartbeat. In that white light, Noah's reflection appeared in a puddle at his feet. Face smeared with ash, eyes lit with purpose. The boy who had once obeyed the bell no longer existed. The sound that once ruled him would soon mark the moment he struck back. As thunder rolled through the yard, he picked up a piece of broken metal and bent it into a shape only he understood. A small flame. He placed it in his pocket, next to his father's paper, and walked back toward the sleeping camp. Inside, the boys stirred but didn't wake. The machines outside hissed and cooled, not knowing they'd soon be the first to fall. Noah lay on his cot, wide awake, staring into the dark, and whispered, "Tomorrow it begins." The burn didn't look deep at first. Just another mark on a body already covered in them. But when Noah peeled back the cloth, the skin on his shoulder glistened raw and red, shaped like a crooked flame. It stung when air touched it, but he didn't flinch. The pain made him feel awake. It reminded him that he was still here, breathing, planning, dangerous in ways Briggs could never understand. That scar would never fade. He decided he didn't want it to. The next morning, the yard moved slower than usual. The storm had soaked everything, and the furnaces hissed like snakes when rainwater hit their sides. Briggs stalked through the mud, shouting for double speed. He didn't look at Noah, but Noah felt the weight of his stare, suspicion lingering like smoke. The paper hidden in his shoe dug into his skin with every step, a constant reminder of what he carried. Proof. Purpose. By noon, one of the older boys collapsed near the scrap line. Noah rushed to help, but Briggs barked, "Leave him." Noah didn't stop. He dragged the boy out of the path of a forklift just as the driver slammed the brakes. The machine's edge clipped Noah's shoulder. Pain exploded through his scar, blinding him for a second. The foreman cursed. "Can't you do one thing right?" He kicked Noah hard in the ribs. The others looked away. Only Ethan whispered, "Stop." Briggs turned, his voice low. "You want to join him?" Ethan fell silent. Noah stayed on the ground, the mud mixing with blood beneath his cheek. Then he smiled, just a small broken curl of his lip. "You hit like you're scared," he murmured. Briggs froze. For the first time, Noah saw hesitation in the man's eyes. Then the belt came down again. That night, the wound burned worse than ever. Noah pressed a piece of cold metal against it, the only medicine he had. Ethan sat beside him, eyes wide. "You shouldn't talk to him like that," he whispered. Noah didn't answer. He stared at the wall until the pain dulled. "You know why scars stay?" he asked finally. Ethan shook his head. "Because forgetting hurts more." When the lights went out, Noah couldn't sleep. He thought about the paper hidden in his shoe. His father's report, his mother's signature, the proof of everything they'd lost. He thought about the journalist Briggs had mentioned, the woman who'd seen the truth once and was forced away. Somewhere out there she still had a camera, maybe still asking questions. He needed to reach her before they buried every trace. The next morning, the guards announced that half the crew would be moved. The rumor spread quick. Relocation meant silence. No one ever returned from new sites. Noah's name wasn't on the list, but Ethan's was. The boy's face went pale. "I don't want to go," he whispered. Noah watched Briggs hand over the paperwork, his smile thin and cruel. "Pack light, kid," Briggs said. "You won't need much." That night, Noah made his decision. He slipped out after midnight, barefoot, moving through shadows. The rain had stopped but left puddles that mirrored the yard lights like cracked stars. He reached the truck loading zone where the transfer documents sat in an unlocked crate. His hands trembled as he pulled Ethan's name from the stack and shoved it into his pocket. Then he replaced it with one of the blank forms he'd stolen earlier, writing his own name over the empty line. When dawn broke, the guards rounded up the new group. Ethan was still half asleep when Noah shoved him toward the back row. "Keep your head down," he whispered. "Don't talk." Ethan frowned. "You said, do it," Noah cut in. "Just do it." The guards counted heads and moved on. Noah stepped into Ethan's place in line. Briggs noticed but didn't care. One less mouth, one less problem. The truck doors slammed shut. The engine rumbled to life. Noah gripped the paper in his shoe, the blank form in his hand, and the scar burning on his shoulder. He didn't know where they were going, but he knew this was his way out. The ride lasted hours, rough roads shaking every bone in his body. When the doors finally opened, the smell hit first: gasoline, dirt, and the faint scent of something cleaner. Freedom. They were outside the city limits, near an abandoned highway lined with dead trees. The guards yelled orders. Noah slipped away when one turned his back, crawling under the fence. He ran until his lungs screamed. For a moment he thought he was free. Then headlights flared behind him. A truck screeched to a halt. Briggs jumped out, gun in hand. "You just don't learn," he said. Noah froze. The light blinded him. Briggs grabbed his collar and slammed him against the hood. "You think anyone cares about a scrap rat like you?" he spat. "Nobody's coming." Noah's voice came out low. "You're wrong." He pulled the spark device from his sleeve, thumb pressing the wire. The flash was small, a blue crack that leapt to Briggs's wrist. The man screamed, dropping the gun. Noah kicked free, grabbed the weapon, and ran into the trees. Bullets followed, tearing bark, slicing air. He ducked behind a fallen trunk, heart hammering. The scar on his shoulder throbbed with every pulse, fire crawling under his skin. When the shots stopped, he heard Briggs shouting orders to search. Noah crawled deeper into the woods, crawling until his knees bled. Rain started again, washing his tracks. He kept moving until the trees opened to a field of broken cars left to rot. There, under a rusted billboard, he collapsed. The gun slipped from his grip. His vision blurred. Somewhere far away, engines roared. He pressed his hand over his wound and laughed weakly, not from joy, but from disbelief that he was still alive. "You can't kill fire," he whispered. When he woke, dawn painted the sky gray. The trucks were gone. He was free but not safe. The paper was still in his shoe, soaked but readable. He tore a strip from his shirt, wrapped it around his shoulder, and started walking. He didn't know where the journalist lived, only that her name was printed on a tag he'd seen through Briggs's office window. Grace Keller, investigative correspondent, The Herald. The name echoed in his mind with every step. Grace. The only person who might believe him. The only one who'd ever looked at the yard and seen the truth. By nightfall he reached the edge of the city. Cars passed, horns blaring, lights blinding. He kept to the alleys, hiding whenever patrols drove by. His body trembled from cold, hunger, and loss. But beneath it all, something else pulsed. The same fire that marked his skin. He wasn't running anymore. He was following a trail his father had started. When he finally found a payphone outside a closed gas station, he dialed the number printed on a torn flyer he'd taken from a bus stop. The Herald newsroom, tips and leads. The line rang once. Then a woman's voice answered, calm and alert. "This is Grace Keller." Noah's throat tightened. "I know who you are," he whispered. "I have proof. About the yard, about the deaths." There was silence on the line, then a shift in her tone. Fear mixed with hope. "Who is this?" He looked down at his trembling hand, the blood-stained bandage, the scar glowing faintly in the streetlight. "Someone they couldn't break," he said, and the line went dead. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the dark phone booth glass, his reflection split by cracks. The scar on his shoulder burned like a promise. Somewhere far away, thunder rumbled again. Noah didn't expect her to come. He thought his call would vanish into static, like everything else he tried to say to the world. But 3 days later, while he sat outside an old laundromat, a gray sedan pulled up and stopped across the street. A woman stepped out holding a camera in one hand, a press badge in the other. Grace Keller. She looked older than he remembered, sharp eyes behind tired worry. Her coat was soaked from rain, her voice calm when she spoke. "You the boy who called?" He nodded once. Her gaze lingered on the bandage under his sleeve, then moved to his face. "Get in. We can't talk here." The car smelled of coffee and old paper. Grace didn't start the engine. She studied him as if weighing whether he was real. "You said you have proof," she said finally. Noah reached into his shoe, pulled out the folded paper, still creased and dirty. He handed it to her. Grace read in silence, her eyes narrowing. The words were clear enough. Internal complaint. Safety violations ignored. At the bottom was his father's name. Grace exhaled slowly. "Where did you get this?" "From the yard," Noah said. His voice was rough, almost cracked from weeks of smoke and silence. "There's more. Files. Kids. They keep them locked in a shack behind the furnaces. They burn the ones with names that talk too much." Grace folded the paper carefully. "If what you're saying is true, this could bring down half the state's construction contracts." She started the car, eyes flicking to the mirrors. "They'll come looking for you." "They already did," Noah said quietly. They drove in silence until the highway opened into the city. Grace pulled into a parking garage and led him through a back entrance of a building marked the Herald. Inside, everything smelled like ink and old stories. A few reporters stared as she walked past with the battered boy in tow. She brought him into her office, locked the door and dropped her coat. "You can stay here tonight," she said. "There's food in the bag." Noah ate slowly, afraid the moment would vanish if he moved too fast. Grace watched him, her voice softening. "You've been through hell." He nodded. "It's not just me." Grace turned her camera toward him. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, Noah talked. About the contract, the yard, Briggs, the kids, the fire, the beatings. His words were broken at first, but once they started, they didn't stop. Grace's hand shook as she adjusted the recorder. "You have no idea how long I've been trying to prove this," she whispered. "Every time I got close, the files disappeared. Now I know why." When he finished, the room was silent except for the ticking of her wall clock. Grace leaned back, eyes wet but steady. "We'll expose them. All of them." Noah stared at the floor. "They'll kill you." "Maybe," she said. "But if we do nothing, they'll keep killing boys like you." The next morning, she left for the courthouse to file an official complaint and copies of the report. Noah stayed hidden in her office. Hours dragged by. Every creak in the hallway sounded like footsteps coming for him. When Grace returned, her face was pale. "The clerk refused to take it," she said. "They said we need a full audit file, photos, witnesses, location coordinates. Without that, it's just a story." Noah's chest tightened. "They'll move the kids. Burn everything." Grace nodded grimly. "Then we go back. Tonight." That night, under a thin moon, they parked near the industrial district. The yard looked darker than before, its fences lit by motion lights that blinked every few seconds. Grace pulled a small camera from her coat. "Stay close," she whispered. They crawled through a gap Noah had used before, sliding through mud until they reached the edge of the storage units. The air was heavy with oil and ash. Grace raised the camera. The shutter clicked softly, catching the cages, the furnaces, the containers stacked like coffins. She whispered, "God help them." Then a door creaked open. Briggs stepped out, cigarette glowing in the dark. Noah froze. His scar burned under the bandage. Grace ducked behind a pile of tires, holding her breath. Briggs walked past, muttering into his phone. "No, Keller hasn't been seen," he said. "If she shows up again, we'll handle it." When he disappeared inside, Noah motioned toward the shack. They ran, crouched low, and slipped through the door. The air inside was thick with dust. Grace aimed her flashlight at the crates. Names were printed in faded ink, most crossed out. She started photographing each file. Noah moved to the back, prying open a drawer. Inside, he found a metal tin sealed with tape. When he ripped it open, dozens of photographs spilled out. Kids, faces he recognized, bruised and dirty, some missing. At the bottom lay an old ID badge. Thomas Hale, site foreman. His father's face, covered in grime, smiling. Noah's breath caught. "He tried to expose them," he whispered. "He died for this." Grace lifted the badge carefully. "This is enough to start an investigation," she said. We need to get out before. The door slammed open. A flashlight beam hit their faces. Briggs stood there, gun raised. You really are a stupid kid, he said. Grace dropped the camera, hands up. You can't stop this now, she said. The world will know. Briggs smirked. The world doesn't care. He turned the gun toward Noah. You should have stayed buried, boy. Noah didn't move. His heartbeat slowed. Behind Briggs, the furnace pipes rattled from pressure. The air too hot, too tight. Grace whispered. Noah, don't. But he already had. He pressed his thumb against the spark device hidden in his sleeve. A sharp blue light flashed, catching the leaking gas line. The explosion tore through the shack, throwing them all to the ground. Flames erupted, swallowing the papers, the crates, the lies. Briggs screamed as fire climbed his coat. Grace grabbed Noah's arm, dragging him through the wreckage. They burst out into the yard, coughing, eyes burning. Behind them, the building collapsed in a wave of orange. Noah fell to his knees, the badge still clutched in his fist. The fire reflected in his eyes. The same fire that killed his father, now devouring the men who caused it. Grace shouted something he couldn't hear over the roar. Her camera lay shattered, but she grabbed the memory card and pressed it into his palm. Run, she cried. He hesitated, watching the inferno consume everything that once defined his pain. The heat felt almost cleansing. For the first time, he didn't feel powerless. He felt like the truth itself. Dangerous, alive, unstoppable. Then he ran. The night behind him burned until it looked like sunrise. Noah ran until his legs gave out. The smoke followed him like a ghost, curling through the broken streets as alarms wailed across the district. Behind him, the scrapyard burned brighter than any sunrise. He stumbled into an alley, coughing, blood streaking his lips. Grace caught up moments later, her coat torn, one side burned. You're bleeding, she said. Noah shook his head. Not enough to stop. They leaned against a wall, listening to sirens draw closer. Grace checked the memory card, her hands trembling. If this survived, she whispered. We have them. Noah stared at the black chip between her fingers, his father's proof, his mother's redemption, his own reason to keep breathing. When the first fire trucks roared past, Grace grabbed his hand. We move now. They slipped through the side streets, avoiding police lights and company guards. The air was thick with chaos. Men shouted orders, radios crackled with confusion. Nobody noticed two figures vanish into the maze of the city's forgotten blocks. By dawn they reached the river. Noah's feet were cut raw, his face gray with ash. Grace tore strips from her sleeve to bind his hands. We'll go to the press office, she said. Upload the footage before anyone silences us. Noah looked at the horizon where smoke still rose. Briggs. She shook her head. No body yet. He didn't answer. Part of him hoped the man had burned. Another part feared he hadn't. Monsters like Briggs rarely died the first time. They crossed an old rail bridge to the other side of the city. Grace's car was parked beneath the tracks, hidden under a tarp. As she started the engine, Noah's head slumped against the window. He drifted in and out of sleep, flashes of fire and screams still playing behind his eyelids. In his dreams, his father stood by the furnaces again, but this time he wasn't dying. He was pointing not at Noah but at the horizon. When he woke, they were already in the downtown district. Grace drove fast, checking mirrors. They'll blame you, she said. They'll call it arson, murder, anything to bury the story. So from now on you don't exist. No name. No face. You're a ghost until this goes public. Noah nodded. I've been a ghost my whole life. They parked behind the Herald building. Grace took the card, clutched it tight. Wait here, she said. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, find the nearest police station and show them this. She handed him a folded photo, her press ID. They'll know. Noah didn't argue. He watched her disappear into the lobby, coat flaring like smoke. Minutes passed. Then sirens echoed again, closer this time. Black SUVs turned into the alley. Men in suits stepped out, earpieces flashing under streetlight. They weren't police. Noah ducked behind a dumpster, heart pounding. Two of the men entered the building. Another stayed behind, scanning the street. Noah's mind raced. Grace was inside with the only copy of the truth, and they were here to erase it. He reached into his pocket. The spark device was gone, melted in the fire. All he had was the scar, throbbing like it remembered what to do. He waited for a distraction. One came when a delivery truck stalled nearby, its horn blaring. The guard turned his head, just enough for Noah to slip through the service door. Inside, the hallway buzzed with fluorescent light. He heard shouting upstairs, Grace's voice sharp and defiant. "You don't scare me," she said. A man replied coldly, "You should be more careful about the stories you chase." Noah climbed the stairwell 2 steps at a time. The door to Grace's office was open. She stood behind her desk, holding the memory card. A man in a gray suit reached for her, gun half drawn. "You can't kill a story," she said. "Watch me," he replied. Before he could pull the trigger, Noah slammed the door into him. The man stumbled. Grace ducked. The gun fired, the bullet shattering glass. Noah grabbed the man's wrist, twisting hard. The gun clattered to the floor. Grace kicked it away. They fought in silence except for grunts and the thud of fists on flesh. When the man went down, Noah's knuckles were bleeding, his chest heaving. Grace looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Not a boy anymore, but something forged in fire. She plugged the memory card into her laptop. "Keep the door," she said. Noah braced it with his shoulder. The computer screen blinked, progress bar crawling slow as time itself. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Another man shouted, "They're in there." "Almost done," Grace yelled. Bullets tore through the door. Wood splintered near Noah's face. He didn't flinch. "Faster." "I'm trying," Grace cried. The upload bar hit 90%. Another shot ripped the hinges loose. Noah shoved a filing cabinet against the door. The computer beeped once, 100%. "It's live," Grace shouted. "Every server in the network has it." The door burst open. 3 men stormed in. Grace grabbed the laptop, threw it to Noah. "Run." He hesitated, then sprinted through the broken window onto the fire escape. Glass sliced his arm, but he didn't stop. Grace stayed behind, swinging a metal rod to slow them. He climbed down the ladder as fast as his shaking hands allowed. Below, the alley stretched empty. Tires screeched above him, more SUVs arriving. He jumped the last 10 feet, landing hard, ankle twisting. He looked up once. Grace was still at the window shouting, "Go!" Then a flash. A gunshot. The world froze. Grace fell backward, her camera tumbling after her, shattering beside Noah's feet. He stared up at the broken window, his body numb. For a moment all sound disappeared. No sirens, no shouts, just the echo of one woman's voice still hanging in the air. He picked up her camera. The lens was cracked, but inside the display a message blinked. "Upload complete." The truth was out. Men shouted from above. Noah ran, clutching the camera like it was alive. He disappeared into the labyrinth of alleys, chased by the sound of boots and engines. Blood dripped down his sleeve, his breath ragged. Every step hurt, but he didn't slow. Grace had given her life for the proof his father died trying to expose. Now the weight of both deaths sat in his hands. When he finally stopped, he was under the same bridge where they'd parked that morning. The river glimmered faintly under city lights. He dropped to his knees, chest shaking. "I told you they'd come," he whispered. Above him, helicopters circled the industrial district. News banners lit up every screen across downtown, breaking exploitation scandal linked to Hale Industrial Group. Grace's name appeared beneath it as the source. Her story. Their story. Noah stared at the reflection of the headlines rippling across the water. For the first time since his father's death, he let himself cry, not from pain but from release. The tears cut through the dirt on his face, mixing with the rain that began to fall again. He whispered, "You did it, Grace." Then softer, "We did." The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of smoke from the scrapyard, the scent of endings and beginnings. He pressed his scar, the mark still warm, and looked toward the skyline. Somewhere out there, the people who built his cage were watching their empire collapse. But he wasn't done yet. He stood, limping toward the city lights, camera in hand. "You took everything," he said under his breath. "Now I'll take your name." And with that, he vanished into the night, leaving behind the river that reflected both fire and freedom. The city didn't sleep after the story broke. Screens glowed in every diner and bus stop, all showing the same headline. Child labor ring exposed, Journalist dead, footage verified. Grace Keller's photo filled the newsfeed, her eyes steady even in stillness. Below it, blurred images from the scrapyard, children behind fences, Briggs's men, the smoke. Proof the world could no longer look away from. Noah watched from a motel room on the edge of downtown. The television flickered, painting his face in blue light. His hands shook around a chipped glass of water. Grace's voice still echoed in his head, the way she'd said run. He hadn't wanted to. He should have stayed. Every breath carried that guilt like glass in his lungs. The knock on the door snapped him back. He reached for the knife he kept under the mattress. "Who is it?" A quiet voice answered. "Someone who believes you." Noah hesitated, then opened the door. A man in his 40s stepped in, carrying a folder and a badge, Federal Bureau of Investigation. He closed the door softly. "Name's Agent Porter. You're the boy from the footage, right?" Noah nodded. The agent studied him for a moment, then sighed. "You've started a war, son. Briggs's employers are panicking. People are missing. Files burned. But thanks to that upload, the Justice Department's moving in. We need your testimony to finish this." Noah's stomach tightened. "You'll protect the kids?" "That's the plan," Porter said. "But we need your help to find them before they disappear again." Noah looked at the camera lying on the table, Grace's final gift. "She died for this," he said quietly. Porter nodded. "Then let's make it mean something." They left before dawn in an unmarked car. The streets were empty except for newspaper boxes overflowing with Grace's story. "The Boy in the Flames," one headline called him. Another read, "Hale Corporation denies allegations, blames sabotage." Noah stared at the headlines passing by like ghosts. "They're already twisting it," he muttered. "That's what truth does," Porter said. "It threatens comfort." At the Bureau's safe house, Noah met two other survivors rescued from similar sites. Both were older, one girl, Lena, 17, with burns up her arm, the other, Malik, small but sharp-eyed. They stared at Noah like he was something between legend and curse. "You're the one who burned the yard," Malik said. Noah didn't answer. Lena stepped closer. "They told us your story. You made them listen." He shook his head. "Grace did. I just ran." Porter interrupted. "You'll have a hearing soon. Media's pushing for a live testimony. The people need a face." Noah felt his chest tighten. "They don't need a face. They need justice." Porter sighed. "Sometimes it's the same thing." That night, Noah sat by the window while the others slept. The safe house was quiet except for the hum of the city outside. He replayed Grace's last words in his mind, "Run." He wondered if she'd known he'd come this far. On the table, her broken camera rested beside the pocket watch that had once belonged to his father. He turned it over in his hand, ticking faintly. The door creaked. Lena stepped in barefoot, carrying 2 cups of instant coffee. "You ever sleep?" she asked. Noah half smiled. "Not really." She sat beside him. "They'll try to scare you when you testify. Make you feel small." "I already know how that feels." "Then don't forget it," she said. "It's what makes them afraid of you." In the morning, they were moved to a government building downtown for interviews. Reporters swarmed outside the gates. Noah kept his head down as Porter led them inside. The conference room smelled like metal and paper. Cameras clicked as officials entered. At the far end sat a row of company lawyers, polished, cold, silent. A judge spoke first. "Mr. Hale, you were employed under Hale Industrial's scrap division. Is that correct?" "I was owned," Noah said. His voice didn't tremble. "They forged contracts. My father tried to stop them. They killed him for it." The room murmured. One lawyer stood. "Objection. There's no evidence linking." Porter interrupted. "There is." He projected Grace's photos on the screen. Images of the yard filled the room. Children in chains, burned papers, Briggs's face mid-yell. The lawyers paled. The judge raised a hand. "Continue, Mr. Hale." Noah took a deep breath. "They thought no one would hear us. But every time they hit us, every time they made us bleed, the sound built up. Now the world's hearing it. You can't stop a sound that loud anymore." Lena squeezed his hand under the table. The cameras caught everything. His scars, his trembling voice, the unfiltered truth. By evening, the footage went viral again. Millions watched the boy they'd once ignored speak like he'd lived 1,000 years in silence. People protested outside Hale Industrial Headquarters, holding signs that read children are not machines and justice for grace. Noah watched from the safe house TV, numb and shaking. Porter turned to him. "You did it." He shook his head. "It's not over. Briggs is still out there." Porter's expression darkened. "We're working on it." But Noah saw the hesitation. The kind that said we might never catch him. 2 nights later, the safe house was raided. The first gunshot shattered the window. Porter tackled Noah to the floor. "Go!" he yelled. The hallway filled with smoke and screams. Noah grabbed the pocket watch and camera, sprinting down the back stairs. He heard Lena shouting, then silence. The air smelled of cordite and fear. Outside, black vans blocked the street. He ducked into an alley, climbing a drain pipe to the roof. From above, he saw fire rising again. Not from the yard this time, but from the truth trying to stay alive. Helicopters circled the district. News alerts flashed across screens in nearby windows. FBI safe house under attack. His heart pounded. Someone inside the system had sold them out. He crouched behind a billboard, breathing hard. The city stretching endless below him. He turned on Grace's broken camera. The lens flickered to life, cracked but recording. He whispered, "They think killing us will kill the truth. But the truth's louder now. It's in every voice they tried to silence." He aimed the camera toward the burning street. Sirens wailed. The light from the fire reflected in his eyes. Not fear, not defeat, but a quiet rage. He pressed record and said, "If you're watching this, don't forget her name. Grace Keller. Don't forget what they did to us. Don't let this die when I do." He uploaded the clip using a nearby signal tower. The progress bar crawled painfully slow. Bullets cracked the night. One grazed his leg. Another shattered a pipe beside him. Then he smiled, a small, tired, defiant smile. Below, armed men burst through the alley. He slipped into the shadows before they reached the roof. The city swallowed him again, but this time he wasn't running for safety. He was running for war. The courtroom was too quiet for how much blood had been spilled to get there. Cameras lined the walls, reporters packed shoulder to shoulder, the air heavy with anticipation. Noah Hale sat at the witness table, hands folded tightly on his knees. His scar itched under his shirt, pulsing with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Across from him sat the men who built his prison, suits pressed, smiles practiced, eyes hollow. Hale Industrial Group. The name on every machine that had stolen a childhood. The judge's gavel struck once. Court is in session. Noah's pulse steadied. He wasn't that trembling boy from the yard anymore. He had Grace's voice in his head, his father's face in his memory, and the weight of every name burned into his skin. Agent Porter nodded from the front row. A silent promise of protection. The company's lead attorney, Miles Hanover, stood first. A man too slick to be human. "Mr. Hale," he began, "you've been through great tragedy. But can you prove that my clients directly ordered or condoned the abuses you claim?" Noah stared back, calm but cold. "They built the system that allowed it. They paid the men who owned us. They forged my father's signature and buried him when he tried to speak." Hanover smiled, thin and sharp. "And you have physical evidence?" Noah reached into his pocket, pulling out the pocket watch. The metal was cracked, the glass clouded. He opened the back panel and revealed the folded paper Grace had rescued from the flames, the internal report bearing his father's name. "This survived 2 fires," Noah said. "You tried to erase him. You failed." Gasps rippled through the room. The judge motioned for the bailiff to collect the paper. Hanover shifted, his confidence faltering. "That proves nothing," he snapped. "It could be fabricated." Porter stood. The department verified the ink and signatures. "It's authentic." The judge looked over the document, eyes narrowing. "Proceed, Mr. Hale." Noah leaned forward. "You said I can't prove they ordered it. But you can hear them." He gestured toward the monitors as Porter signaled the technician. Audio filled the room, a recording Grace had taken before the fire. Briggs's voice rasped through the speakers. "Move the kids before inspection. Keller's been asking questions. Make it look like an accident if you have to." The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted, cameras flashed. Hanover tried to object, but the judge slammed the gavel. Order. Noah stared at the floor. That's how my father died. They called it an accident. Hanover's voice cracked as he tried to recover. Your actions, setting fires, fleeing the scene, those are crimes too, Mr. Hale. Noah looked up slowly. You think fire's a crime when it burns a cage? The room went silent again. Even the judge didn't speak for a moment. The prosecutor stepped forward next, calm but fierce. Mr. Hale, what do you want from this court? Noah's throat tightened. He thought of Grace, of the yard, of Ethan and Lena, of every name crossed out on those folders. I don't want money. I don't want fame. I want the world to stop pretending it doesn't see. I want them to remember every name you erased. I want the law to hurt the way we did. His words hit like strikes of a hammer. Even Hanover looked away. The prosecutor nodded. Thank you. As Noah stepped down, flashes from cameras filled the room like strobe lights. He moved past the company executives, their perfume of power already souring. One of them, the Sir Richard Kellen, leaned toward him and whispered, You'll never win, boy. You think truth matters in a room full of men like me? Noah stopped. He turned slowly, his voice low enough that only the microphones caught it. It doesn't have to matter to you. It only has to matter to the world watching. Kellen's smirk faltered. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of people waited behind barriers. Survivors, journalists, citizens holding photos of lost workers. When Noah stepped onto the steps, a wave of sound rose. Applause. Chanting. His name echoing in voices that had once been silent. He froze, overwhelmed. The scar on his shoulder throbbed under his jacket, the mark of every pain he'd endured. He wasn't used to being seen, not as a victim, but as proof that survival itself was rebellion. Porter came up beside him. You did it, kid. It's done. Noah shook his head. It's not done until they pay. Porter frowned. The verdict will come. We have the evidence. We'll get them. Noah looked at the courthouse doors where the executives hid behind lawyers. They still walk free. Grace doesn't. The crowd's chant grew louder. Cameras circled, recording his every breath. He raised the pocket watch, holding it to the sunlight. This belonged to my father, he said, voice carrying through the microphones. It stopped ticking the day he died. Today it started again. He clicked it open. The sound of its faint ticking cut through the noise, amplified by 100 recorders. He told me once that time only moves for people who fight. So fight. The crowd erupted again. Tears filled his eyes, but he didn't hide them. That night, the news showed every angle. The boy who burned an empire standing where no one thought he'd survive. Public outrage flooded the government. Senators demanded action. The Justice Department launched a full investigation into Hale Industrial. By morning, half the board had resigned. But Briggs was still missing. Porter visited Noah at the protection house later that night. We found something, he said. He slid a photograph across the table. A gas station security shot, blurry but unmistakable. Briggs bandaged, alive. Noah's hands clenched. Where? Outside state lines. He's hiding under a new name. Noah's jaw tightened. Then I'm not done. Porter hesitated. You're not a vigilante. Let us handle it. Noah stared at the photograph. You can't handle what you don't understand. He's not afraid of laws. He's afraid of truth, and I'm the only one who still carries it. He stood, slipping the photo into his pocket. The scar on his shoulder pulsed like it remembered the flames. He turned toward the window, where the city lights burned like scattered embers. Porter called after him. Noah, don't go back to war. He didn't answer. He just looked out, voice quiet, steady. War never ended. It just moved into daylight. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, echoing the sound of hammers and furnaces long gone cold. Somewhere out there, Briggs still breathed, and Noah knew what came next wasn't about revenge. It was about ending the story his father never got to finish. He touched the scar through his shirt and whispered, Tomorrow. Noah hadn't slept since the verdict. The trial had ended with victory headlines and breaking news banners, but for him, justice felt unfinished. He kept seeing Briggs's face in the photograph, burned alive, unpunished. The city celebrated, the world moved on, but Noah couldn't. The fire inside him still burned, quieter now but steady. He stood by the window of his safe house, watching dawn light spill through cracked glass. Somewhere out there, the man who killed his father and Grayskeller still walked free. He opened the pocket watch and listened to it tick. Each beat reminded him why he couldn't stop yet. The scar on his shoulder ached like it remembered every promise he'd made in blood. He whispered, "One last truth." He left before sunrise. Porter found the note hours later, short, written on the back of a court transcript. "Don't follow. This isn't revenge. It's closure." Noah traveled south using fake names, moving through bus stations and back roads. The news had cooled. People knew his story now. Some called him a hero, others called him dangerous. He didn't care. He just wanted the truth to end clean. By the third night, he found the small town on the map, a name scrawled in pencil on the edge of the photograph Porter had shown him. A gas station near the border. When he got there, the air smelled of diesel and dust. A man was fixing a generator behind the building, limping, half his face scarred from fire. Briggs. Alive. Noah didn't hide. He walked straight toward him. The man looked up, froze. Recognition flashed, followed by something close to fear. "You," he said. Noah stopped a few feet away. "You should have burned." Briggs's hands trembled slightly. "You think you're a hero? You killed people that night." "I freed them." "You ruined everything." Noah's voice hardened. "I rebuilt it." He tossed a folder onto the dirt, newspaper clippings, trial notes, pictures of survivors now living in safe homes. "They're starting again. Without you." Briggs laughed, hollow. "You think the world changes because of one boy? There'll be more like me. Always." Noah stepped closer. "Maybe. But you'll be the last one we forget." For a moment, the wind swallowed the silence between them. Briggs reached for the wrench at his belt. Noah didn't move. "Go ahead," he said softly. "Try." The man's hand fell. Age and guilt had already broken him more than bullets ever could. He sank onto the steps, eyes dull. "What do you want from me?" "Your confession." Briggs scoffed. "And if I don't?" Noah looked at the scar on his own arm. "Then I tell the world you begged for mercy." Briggs stared at him, something flickering in his face, pride then shame. Finally he spoke. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. Your father was just supposed to keep quiet. The company." "The company?" Noah interrupted. "The company built graves." Briggs's voice cracked. "We were all paid to look away." Noah pressed record on Grace's cracked camera. "Then look at it now." The lens caught the man's trembling face as he confessed everything. The cover-ups, the fake deaths, the night they set the fire that killed Thomas Hale. When it was done, Briggs dropped his head into his hands. "I don't want forgiveness," he said. "You don't have it," Noah replied. He stopped recording. He could have walked away then, but something made him turn back. "Grayskeller died for that footage," he said. "My father died trying to warn you. You live with that." He walked to the highway, leaving Briggs behind in the dust. The morning sun rose gold and sharp over the hills. For the first time, the light didn't hurt his eyes. Months passed. Investigators found Briggs's confession online. It ended the last argument Hale Industrial tried to make. Executives were sentenced, funds seized, and a national task force for exploited labor was formed in Grayskeller's name. Noah didn't attend the ceremonies. He lived quietly near the coast, working with engineers rebuilding solar grids for poor neighborhoods. Technology he designed from scrap, powered by the same principles he'd learned among ruins. People called him the boy who built fire, but he always corrected them. "Fire destroys," he'd say. "Light rebuilds." He visited the graves once a year. His father's, then Grace's. He'd sit between them, talking softly as if they could hear him through the wind. "We won," he'd whisper. "But I still miss the fight." One evening, as dusk painted the shore, a group of kids from the foundation gathered outside his workshop. They were children once trapped in the same systems he'd escaped. Now they studied mechanics, coding, architecture. One girl pointed to his scar and asked, "Does it still hurt?" Noah smiled faintly. "Only when I forget why it's there." She nodded. "My dad says scars mean you survived." "No," he said gently. "Scars mean you changed." Later that night, alone in the workshop, he opened the pocket watch again. It ticked perfectly now, repaired, steady, alive. Beside it sat the broken camera, sealed in a glass case. On its label, "Property of Grace Keller, Truth Never Dies." He pressed a switch on the wall. The lights dimmed, revealing hundreds of small devices lined across the shelves. Solar lanterns, each one handmade by the kids at the foundation. When lit together, they formed a shape on the far wall, a glowing flame. Noah stood in front of it, his silhouette outlined in gold. He whispered, "This is what fire's meant for." Outside, the city hummed, rebuilt, awake, remembering. The news that night reported the government's new law named after him, the Hale Reform Act, protection for every child labor survivor. They called it the light born from fire. Noah didn't watch the broadcast. He sat on the workshop floor, tracing the edge of his scar. For the first time, it didn't burn. It glowed faintly under the lamplight, as if part of him had become flame, not to destroy but to keep others warm. He whispered, "Dad, Grace, it's done." The wind blew through the open window, carrying the sound of children laughing in the courtyard below. It mixed with the rhythmic tick of the pocket watch, the heartbeat of a life rebuilt. When the last light went out, the flame shape on the wall stayed glowing a few seconds longer, then faded slowly into the dark. Not an ending but a beginning. And somewhere in that quiet, Noah smiled. The boy who once sold shadows had built something brighter. A world that could finally see.